What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of the After You cast. Now today, we're going to be sitting down and changing up the scenery, as you can see. And I always like to, in every season, have one episode where at least I sit and talk in reference to, how the season's going, how things have changed. And yeah, thinking back to season 1, when I did one of these episodes, it was right in the thick of when COVID was was running rampant. Everyone was locked down, couldn't go outside, and it was a really difficult time for a lot of different people, a lot of businesses, and it's taken a long time, and I think we're still in that phase of trying to recover and come back to, previously where we were. So I think this is a great opportunity to kind of just sit back and reflect and highlight, some of those positive things and, how we've gotten to this point where we're at today. So I've written down a couple of notes about a couple of things I want to discuss. First things first, I'd like to give a massive shout out to Podium Space, who are the people who run this incredible building, the place that you see me film my episodes in. I try to utilize different spaces in the building because honestly it's just a great space, and coming from Slough, born and raised, I think it's fantastic to be able to see something that, it kind of sends a message. It's a bit of a beacon to other places and to the people that are from here, to be able to say, hey, look how things are changing, look how things have developed, and still have a long way to go, but I definitely think you could look at how things are developing in the Slough area and, think about some of the positive things out of it. I think for so long in Slough we've kind of been looked over and not really had the opportunity to really create positive content for the people and let people know what we're all about. A lot of the times it's kind of just in and out. So I think a platform like this just gives the opportunity for people to just pause, come up to the top of this rooftop and be able to look at the skyline of Slough and look to see how far, this small little town has come. So yeah, massive shout out to Podium Space because they've worked really well with myself. I've been able to partner with them and strike a fantastic agreement where I can utilize the space to bring these conversations to you guys, to the people. For anyone that does podcasting will know that finding a good location is very difficult. I'd like to also while I'm on that note, I'd like to also give a great big shout out to Tony from Tone Coffee Shop, because back in season 1, when I was scouting around and looking for somewhere to get started and start this process, it was really difficult to find somewhere to, that people are willing to let you do this. So yeah, finding a space to actually film in is actually a hurdle that it's more difficult than you'd think. So yeah, big shout out to these guys for working with me and be willing to work with me to, allow me to use this space. And I think, not sure if you guys will agree, that the environments and the location, the environment of where you have a conversation really matters. And for these kind of conversations, which are all about storytelling, they're all about the individuals who come from not just this area but outside as well. I want, when people come onto here, to be able to look around and be like, wow, like this is professional, this is quality, this is what I want to actually be involved in, as opposed to, not to be bad, but it's just filmed somewhere where no one really cares. There's no real investment, or you just haven't thought it out. And I think that you just lose a little part of the conversation, you lose a little part of the energy what you're trying to build, and that's something that I really wanted to stay away from. So this building is fantastic for that, because it just sets that precedence when people come here. For all of the guests that have been on, I'm sure that they can attest to this. You get that feeling that an investment has already been made before you come in, and I think that is equally important. If I'm asking somebody, or any podcaster is out there asking somebody to share their time, I think that there needs to be some form of investment on your side that showcases how serious you really are about what you want to do. And it does take time, for myself. If anyone who is OG watchers, the OGs out there that have been following since the beginning, they'll know that this is a process. How the content looks today is definitely not how it looked when I first started. So sometimes you just have to begin and then alter along the way and make your changes, because things will never really be perfect. And if you're waiting for them to become perfect before you start, sometimes you never start. So just something to consider. Next big shout out to Hallie, who is my co-host for Minds Emotions. Now, a quick breakdown for anyone that doesn't know. After You is split into two main categories, two shows, if you will. The After You cast is the platform where people come on to kind of tell their stories about who they are, what they're passionate about, and what they do in the world. Whereas the tone for Minds Emotions is quite different. It's much more about mental health, mental illness, general wellness. It's a different tone, a different energy. And I knew from beginning that process it was going to be that way. I wasn't necessarily sure when I launched how it was going to be structured, but I did know that there was a massive importance for it, considering how the world got struck with the pandemic, or whatever you want to call it. But we're all equally kind of affected by it when it comes to, maneuverability, what we can and can't do. It's really great to be able to have that platform come alive, especially throughout the COVID-19 period, which was, again, as I said, very difficult for people. I didn't want to bring those conversations and put them onto After You, because it felt like it was two different conversations kind of being forced into one. After You is a lot more about the creative energy behind what you build, the stories behind who you are, all of those sorts of things, whereas Minds Emotions is a lot more about just the mental side of things, health included as well. So there will be some conversations based around physical health. However, I wanted to really highlight and focus more so on the mental side of things. So it just gave it an opportunity to be able to sit down and have its own breathing room. So when people come on the platform, they're not necessarily confused between what I'm trying to say or what they have to say or what should they say when they come on the platform. So Minds Emotions is an opportunity to bring forth some of those more serious personal issues that people may be dealing with. And I think it's really important that whatever you're doing, you kind of keep that in mind, because it's something that affects all of us, and it's not necessarily something that has been advocated or pushed in the past. This is much more of a new age concept, if you will. But I definitely think it is very important, speaking to a lot of people who have gone through mental health issues, who are going through them or have family members that are dealing with them. The common denominator seems to be, we need more awareness, we need more focused conversations when it comes to mental health, as opposed to trying to bundle it all into one big category. So long story short, Minds Emotions was really all about taking the general aspect of mental health and mental wellness and being able to break it down into more specific conversations and areas where you're able to kind of see it on a more broader scale, and then we can kind of attack different areas, because mental health as we know it is a very vast topic. So big shout out to my co-host Hallie for coming on board and just helping to take that to a new level, having somebody to bounce off of, hold you accountable, and just to join the journey with you. I think is really important. And when somebody comes from the outside to support what you're doing, I think it adds a lot more strength and even confidence to what you're building, because it makes you feel like we're going in the right direction here. Like, if other people are really resonating with it to the point where they want to come on board, that's really what we want to achieve from this. Outreach, reach out to people, be able to share their situations, but then also be able to break them down. And having somebody like Hallie, who is already very big in the community and big on community work, it's great to have her who kind of lends that extra listening ear, and also just can ask certain questions that perhaps I maybe wouldn't have thought of. So big shout out to her. I really appreciate you, and stay tuned for a lot more Minds Emotions content. Shout out to the guests. How could I not speak about the guests? I think so all of the guests on season 2 have been new guests, which I actually didn't plan initially. When I first started season 2, or planning for season 2, I was kind of thinking I want to bring back on some faces that you may have seen from season 1, as well as trying to bring some new people to the platform. But what I realized is that I was kind of getting some more messages from people that were newcomers, or people that I have already known but would like to kind of jump on the platform as well. So far, at least, it's mostly all been new faces, which I think is a great thing as well, because it just expands that network, continues to, push us in the right direction of meeting other people. But it was just a pleasant surprise for me, because I had a good 3 or 4 names, and still do. So expect to see them at some point in the very near future. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting how up until this point it's pretty much been new faces and new people. So a big shout out to all of the guests that have come on and shared their time. I always say that sharing your time for me is much more valuable than sharing your money, because time you never get back, but money we can always make more of. So when it comes to people sharing their time and coming out of their way, that's why I try to be the best host that I can be. Think about where they're going to be, think about their journey to get here, think about basic refreshments, basic things that a host that should consider. So, but at the same time, it's down to the individuals to come on and be willing to share their stories. So a big shout out to all of you guys, and big shout out to the season 1 guests as well, who are still rocking with the platform. I get messages from them on the daily basis, just little words of encouragement, and yeah, it's just nice to know that the people that you're bigging up also have that kind of reciprocated mentality when it comes to working with you, and I'm sure that you guys can see that as well in the conversations. So yeah, big shout out to you guys. So briefly, between season 1 to season 2, there haven't been too many adjustments that I really wanted to make. It was more about just kind of getting it back running again. As you can see, a few things have changed. You're going to improve or make improvements along the way, this is a learning process for me. I try to be as open and honest as I can since season 1. And I always said since season 1, each episode I would try to improve or tweak or adjust one thing. And you don't necessarily notice those things when you watch one episode at a time. But if you was to watch them like I've done a few times in a row, or watch them all the way through, I'm able to see that there has been a lot more changes than I actually initially thought. So just a little key message for anyone out there who's creating content or podcasting: sometimes you just got to start at whichever point that you're at with whatever equipment that you have. Because if you kind of get wrapped up in thinking, I need this camera, I need this microphone, I need this location, sometimes that you may never get it off of the ground. And I realized the point that I started at, hindsight's 2020, right? So take it back to that point. I look at that time now and I consider, knowing what I know now, I'm almost like, damn, I never would have filmed it that way. I never would have used those mics. I never would have shot it at that angle. So, moral of the story, just start. And then what you find is that people start to gravitate towards you if your message is coming from a good place. And I definitely like to think that this platform is all about the people. I didn't call it After You for no reason. It really is all about the individuals, and targeting those individuals in an area which hasn't really had a lot of media, hasn't had a lot of support, marketing, advertising, pushed into it, and still is struggling in those aspects. But you have to start somewhere. And for me, I looked at it like that. I looked at it, if Slough doesn't have it, well, why don't you just create it? If you've got the skills, you've got the know-how, you've got the networking and capabilities, it needs someone to begin the process. And hopefully that can encourage other people out there, just to start their own content, to reach out and, maybe jump on here if they want to. But even if they wasn't to do that and go off and just do their own thing, I think it's important, and I've said this before, areas really push art and creativity and culture, because that is really it's like the identity of where you come from. and it lets people from the outside know this is what we stand for, this is what we're passionate about. And as I said, I think Slough has had too much of an in and out process, too much of a through door approach, which is basically come in, take advantage, use what's available, use what's there, and then just move back on or move on to wherever you're going next. And I think when you're from here and you're born and raised, you got a little bit more pride attached, you know. And when you've gone to school here from primary school days all the way up to being a grown adult, it's very difficult to just have a flippant attitude and be like, yeah, you know, I ain't gonna do nothing, I'll just move out as well, or, you know, I just won't give anything back to the town. I don't think it's necessarily about being here, especially with the way that the world is so digital. But I definitely think if we can use our platforms to bring about change and use them for what they are intended to do, which is to connect us and to create things and, you know, to tell stories, then I think that can only be a positive thing if those stories are coming from the right place. So that's kind of my take on how things have developed from season 1 to season 2, and, you know, kind of why those things are really important for me personally. Changes, improvements. Yeah, in terms of, I kind of spoke a little bit about changes and improvements. To be honest, for me, when it comes to changes and improvements, I think the change really comes from self, as opposed to kind of the equipment or the materials that you may use. Of course, things you always try to improve your craft as time progresses, but one thing that I've really learned over the years is that you really need to focus on improving self, and then as a byproduct of that, typically, is that the things that you do tend to improve. Great example, I started taking the gym very seriously this year in January. Bear in mind, I'm coming from a sporting background where I played football for the majority of my life. However, one thing that I have really come to terms with is that in order for you to really thrive in one particular area, you need to throw yourself into it, you know, and then it needs to become part of your lifestyle. I think the mistake I made in the past when it comes to the gym was I kind of attached it to whatever I was doing. So if it was football, I'd do a bit of gym, and that would help supplement what I'm doing in football. Or if I'm busy at uni, I'm working out at the gym, because it was more convenience and it was more of an accessory to what I was doing. Whereas now what I've done is I've kind of changed that to make it a necessity. And when you change things to make them a necessity, they become part of your lifestyle. And I remember the first couple of months there's a few days I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do it, and I'm not too sure, I'm feeling a bit down today, maybe I'll just skip today. And you kind of you have to make a decision, you have to make a very strict decision with yourself. Are you going to maintain it, or are you going to eventually just kind of usher it to the side? And only you can make that choice. But as I said, for me personally, I realized that when I made that, turned the gym into a necessity, it doesn't become as much of a chore. It's much more, because it's now part of your lifestyle. I'm almost like I've flipped it to the point where I'm like, when I've got to make sure I go to the gym, so then now I must accordingly plan other things around it, as well as you can do the same thing for work. You can do the same thing for personal time. You really have to allocate and ask yourself, what are you doing consistently? And then, are you doing those things consistently by choice, or are you doing those things because you're not filling that time with something you actually want to do? Oftentimes I think people can get caught up doing things because they have a lot of free time, or they don't necessarily fill their free time with something constructive or something that is going to help add something to your life. And then you kind of get caught up in things that aren't really just adding value to your life, if I'm being honest. And so for me, that's why a simple example of the gym is a great one, because it's quite universal. Anyone can go to the gym, anyone can work out. But I definitely think it's much more of a mindset thing. If you want to take those next steps and be able to improve, and now that I look back and I think, oh wow, now that I've kind of committed, it's not so much of a pain to want to go. It's not so much of a when am I going to have to schedule this in, if that makes sense. So that's just something to keep in mind as well for the people, just a little example of a way that you can change something in your personal life and make it become part of your lifestyle, so that it's not necessarily, energy exerted. It'll feel more like it just needs to be done. And when it needs to be done, you find ways to make it happen, as opposed to I'm kind of doing it, it helps add something to my life, but it's not a necessity. I don't need to do it. And I think you need to tell yourself, you almost need to trick your mind sometimes to be able to tell yourself that you need things that are good for you. So definitely think from season 1 to season 2, the biggest thing that I can highlight that I've seen as an improvement has been an improvement in my personal self, in terms of holding myself more accountable, being more consistent in what I say I'm going to do, and then kind of just removing the things that I know aren't really adding much value to my life, and also have the potential or the capability of pulling you off of your path, disrupting your journey, if you will. So yeah, consistency. It's a very common word that kind of gets thrown around a lot now, and I can understand why, because if we're being honest, consistency is one of those things where it is almost necessary for most things to be successful. You need that element of consistency of when things are going to be scheduled, how often they're going to be scheduled, how they will coincide and connect, and be able to link up, so that you can kind of look back. And I think the biggest factor in why consistency is important isn't necessarily for the fact of just getting things done. I think the most important part about it is that you're able to look back and reflect and look at things that you have already done. So just operating in a forward motion, I'm just making moves, I'm just making things go forward, I'm just heading and stepping, just making steps, step by step, to get where I want to go, that's great. However, in order to adjust your course and actually get to where you really need to be, you really need to have a look at what you've been doing along the way. And the only real way to do that is to be consistent in what you're doing, so that you're able to say, hey, I've been doing this for 6 months, I've been doing this for a year, I've been doing this for 2 years, I've been doing this for 10 years. And now I'm able to see, hey, this is what's not working, this is what needs adjusting, and this is how I can improve. So consistency for me is more about the process of knowing what you've already done, so that you can make those adjustments along the way. So that's kind of how I surmise consistency, and how it's been able to kind of help me in my journey, and how maybe it can help you guys. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think in general when it comes to being consistent. I know it's not easy. I don't think anyone out there can say I'm consistent all of the time. I think that we're human beings at the end of the day, and I think that there are times where we will slip up, we will get a little bit complacent, or even get a little bit too overconfident, that we just develop into expectation, and now that's kind of that can be a dangerous place. But overall, I think that being consistent is more about finding something that drives you and that you're already passionate about. Like for me, football and storytelling are two very core passions in my life, and coincidentally I'm working with people in both of those fields. So it's really all about creating the skills necessary that will benefit what you're passionate about. And I think platforms like this, and why I'm so passionate about this, is because I'm able to see who those individuals are, and I'm able to piece together and bridge certain gaps where other people wouldn't necessarily be able to see those connections. And then for the young people coming up, or people looking to transition into a new career path, they're able to see examples of how you can bridge certain gaps, and how certain people think, and how similar that can actually be in two completely different career paths. but there's always some form of a similarity or something that you can take away that can help to improve whatever you're building on or whatever you're working towards. So that's one thing that I'm really passionate about, and I think that, you know, if whoever's watching out there, some people I learn from myself. Some people I'm sitting and I brought onto the platform because they inspire me, they inspire what I would like to do. So never be afraid to reach out to people that also inspire you, so that you can maybe learn something. You never know, there could be opportunities there that you didn't know about. Have the confidence to be able to speak what you're passionate about, and then speak to others who share in that passion. And it could be something different. They could be passionate in a completely different field, a completely different career path, but what you'll tend to find is that passion itself is what tends to bring people together. So it's just something to think about. But yeah, I hope that whoever's out there listening could maybe take away and add a little bit more consistency to what you're passionate about. And I'm telling you, you're gonna see results, you're gonna see change, even if it starts internally and then starts to manifest out into the world. The people I try to bring on, they really are living in their purpose. They really are passionate about the things that they do. So you really get a feel and learn so much more than you typically would from a regular conversation, you know? And then you also find that when people are living in their purpose, naturally a byproduct of that is that you start to attract others who think along the same wavelength, you know? Because it's difficult enough in the world to operate knowing what you have to do, knowing the obligations, knowing the responsibilities. So operating and living in that purpose, this is going to make things that little bit easier, that little bit more clear for you to figure out what step you need to take next, or even feeling confident to take the step, which is also another thing that kind of slows people down and can hinder success. So this platform was all about discovering your purpose, storytelling, finding who you are, and then bringing people onto the platform who also resonate with that message, and then explaining to you as the audience how they got there, what the steps they took to get there, and currently what they're doing and working on, so that you can get a reference and you can get a clear picture of this is how this person operates, and then you can pick out things that may be similar in your path and say, hey, okay, that's working for them, all right, perhaps I'll try that for me, let me see if that works for me. And everyone's on a different time scale or on a different timeline, so try not to make comparisons with people out there that are doing things. Focus on self, focus on developing self, and a byproduct of that is improvement, is meeting people that can add more value to your life, if that makes sense. So a little bit of a rant, but I just thought that was really important, and I think it's important for young people particularly to hear individuals speak about passion and to speak about purpose and to speak about consistency, not in a flippant, disrespectful way, but more in terms of adding fuel to your fire. You know, I feel like everyone has a fuel that they need to push them, and it's different for each individual. But I like to think that this platform, the fuel, is the creative consistency. I think that's really what life is all about. It's all about communicating and networking with different people, finding out how you can work best together, how you can create new things, how you can solve certain problems that exist in the world. And if we can do that, I feel like that's where you truly get the value out of life. You really start to appreciate the connections that you make and the things that you build and put out into the atmosphere. And this is definitely one of those things I'm very proud to put out into the atmosphere. What to look forward to? So I don't really want to give away any particular people that may be coming onto the platform. As I've said before, that you may see some familiar faces from season 1 that you've seen already, But in terms of new faces, I kind of keep that on the low until it gets closer to the time or when they come through. Bringing people to this area, which is where I come from, and showing them that, one, there's professional environments, and two, there are professional people. Respect it's not given. It's not given. It's never given. You have to earn respect. And sometimes you have to fight to earn that respect. And where we come from, unfortunately, we're not really dealing with the best odds. The odds are against us, if you will. But I tend to find those places where the odds are against the people, they tend to have a lot more character. They tend to have a lot more about them. They tend to have a lot more personality and things to say and stories to tell. So again, it brings me back to the reason why I am so passionate about this platform, and it's because for the first time that I have been able to see in my lifetime, we are now starting to creep up the ladder and start to put out more of a professional image. We're starting to find people who resonate and share in those images from all different backgrounds, from the creative side of things to the logistical, practical side of things, to engineering, to entrepreneurship. There seems to be a wide array of creative thinkers and problem solvers that come from this area. But without platforms to document their stories, you need others to do that. So luckily, I've been able to acquire some of those skills, and I think it makes sense to be able to share those with the world. Again, big shout out to Podium Space, big shout out to my co-host Hallie, big shout out to all of the guests that have been on the pod that have come through, shared their time, just continually making positive steps, improving day by day, and finding new unique ways to bring these messages to the people. So I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of a shorter episode, which is more solo. As I said, it's just about myself just breaking down some of the things that I think are important, review some things that have already happened, and also just to highlight and talk about where we currently are today. And a lot of the times you have to really create the opportunities. They don't just fall out of the sky. So bear that in mind whatever you're building or creating. Don't get too disheartened if people don't pump money or time into your projects, especially if they are fairly new, because it takes time to develop loyalty. It takes time to develop the consistency we talk about. It takes time to develop the message that you're actually trying to put out and to portray with whatever you are selling or with whatever you are promoting. So don't be disheartened when others from the outside aren't quick to rally around and help uplift you or help prop you up. Revel in the fact that you have to work hard. Revel in the fact that it's going to be a little bit more difficult, because it being more difficult is going to be the thing that provides that value down the line, when you can look back and say, oh man, I'm glad it wasn't easy, because now I can really appreciate those struggles. I can really appreciate those hard times of when I had to put in late nights, when I had to operate with no money, when I had to operate with no real connections. So use that as fuel, keep that inside, and use that to motivate and push you on, and then reach out to others who are likely to be able to share that same sentiment. I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to kind of get through. I hope that everyone out there is staying blessed, focused on their mission, and seeing positive gains in whatever they're doing in life. Making positive strides in the right direction, and they're working with people who uplift them and inspire them. If anyone does have any questions, comments, all sorts of anything that they want to ask, or to ask to anyone that's been on the platform, guests that have been on, feel free to shoot me a message, obviously in the comments, or you can hit me up on Instagram. And I think it's all about just uplifting each other, man. That's really what I'm passionate about. So Really appreciate you guys for locking in and supporting. I see loads of messages. I get loads of messages. And I've said this before. You can all, when you do this kind of work, when you get onto the podcasting world, it's those messages from people that you either know or have known from a young age, where they reach out and, you know, they kind of confirm that what you're doing is a positive thing. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's very important that you pay attention to why you're really doing this. And for me, when I receive messages from people that I know, that I've grown up with, it's just a nice reminder that I'm on the right path. And I kind of see it like an opportunity to not just do well for myself, but to do well and make those people, you know, proud of seeing that I worked with that individual, I knew that individual, I'm related to that individual, and they can look at that individual with pride and see that they're on their mission, they're on their goals, and they're working towards something positive. Not all of us, unfortunately, are going to get the chance or the opportunities to make it where we want. So for the ones that actually are on that path, I think you have a little bit more responsibility to hold it up for everyone else. For the people that didn't get the chance, or they sacrificed their time so that you could have the chance, you know. Speaking about parents, speaking about family members, even close friends sometimes. A lot of times people can be living vicariously through you in a positive way. You know, they may be experiencing a slightly harsher experience of the world. Things aren't as easy for them. So when I look at my opportunities, and I've been blessed so many times, from school to sport to career, I really like to reflect and, you know, make those individuals proud who are watching silently in the background, who would love to do this kind of thing or have had their opportunities taken away, and they can say, I'm so glad that you're able to do your thing and you're still pushing it out there and you're still, you know, doing things from the heart, because it can be very difficult to do that today unless you're trained, unless you've got either the connections or the integrity. It's very difficult to really put that content out into the atmosphere now that comes from a genuine, real place. We deal with so much fraud, so much scamming, so much fakery online, that one thing that I pride myself on is that people have come onto this platform and said that it's quite refreshing to be able to get a more realistic, authentic breakdown from somebody who truly wants to see people who are creative, who have a passion, thrive, as opposed to using their energy to just prop yourself up. So yeah, that's something that I really do pride myself on, and I'll continue to do that, because I think that it's gotten me to this point of meeting such amazing people, working with such amazing people, that it'd be foolish to, you know, go against that. So yeah, guys, it's been real, as always. This is Theo checking out. Thank you very much for sharing your time and checking in. Yeah, big up yourself and stay true to what you're building, stay true to your goals. Yeah, keep grinding, keep pushing, and you will eventually get there. You gotta have that belief. If anybody that does want to jump on the pod, that would be interested in coming on, or you know somebody would be, you know, feel free to send me a message. I'm more than willing to, you know, to open those doors and to, you know, help create opportunities for others who are looking. As I said before, if you enjoy this content, please like, share, subscribe. I take this very seriously. I'm very passionate and really want to see these conversations get out as far as they possibly can and help people that really need that help, you know. So that's something that I'm really, really strong on. So yeah, if you get a chance to share that on to somebody that probably would like or be willing to hear these messages, then that would be a blessing. But until the next episode, I will see you very soon. Peace and love.